Welcome back everybody, it's DestinysJesus here. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down how Queasy, Trulex and Jur3ky actually won EU FNCS. They had a really good day 1 coming in 5th, and then day 2 they absolutely clutched up and popped off with 2 wins, 3 wins overall, and they played absolutely insane. They're probably the best high ground team in the world at the moment. They're always on high ground. I'm breaking down from a standpoint of how they would take height, as well as looking at my insights since I was coaching a little bit before and helping with surge plans for the early and mid game, and how I was able to help there, which will help you guys in future tournaments as well. As always, make sure to leave a like as well if you enjoyed the video, and also subscribe if you're new. So first things first is actually go ahead and look at their loot path off spawn. A big thing that people misconceive is the fact that you shouldn't be landing on these bigger POIs like Lazy, Misty, or Slurpee to be winning an FNCS, or even winning cash cups, but you really don't. Landing at a split drop like this can be extremely viable. The biggest important thing that you need to do, especially if you're an IGL forming some kind of split drop loot route, is that you never intersect. You can see here, none of their paths cross over. They're as efficient as possible. They obviously all meet up towards this building to get the upgrades, and also the really nice thing is the fact they're actually able to buy a rift from this place down here. Not a lot of people knew about this, but these guys have done their homework. They figured out you can buy this rift, and that basically allows them to get into a really good position. And we'll talk a little bit more about positioning here with some zone theory, which is really important for you guys. So what is zone theory? This is probably one of the biggest things that I help teams that I work with, is basically understanding the way the zone is going to be pulled from first to second to third, understanding all of those different concepts and how you can get the best positioning possible for surge, and then most importantly to make sure you're in a good position later on where you don't have to move too much. The biggest mistake I see lesser teams doing, like these guys lying towards edge map up here, is the fact they have to move on first, then to second, then their edge second, they have to move again and again and again, and all that sort of stuff adds a lot of extra time, and it kind of costs your rotates. So let's have a look at this zone here. Where would you guess that second zone is going to pull? You can see it's kind of pulling towards bottom right. It's not fully catty corner. It's more towards pulling over towards this ocean. The ocean is probably the best way that you can do this, is figure out which part of the ocean is in here, and that's probably where second zone is going to pull. This isn't 100% accurate, but I've watched literally thousands and thousands of replays, so I have a really good understanding of where the second zone is going to pull. Also, what I did for all of the players that I was working with, like Tayton's trio and Queasy's trio as well, is just marking out the zones from previous days and previous FNCSs. So as you can see here, this is from Middle East Day 2, and it's basically the exact same zone that you get here in Game 2 from Middle East. I basically marked all the good spots for Surge on first and second zone, so you can see all these blue spots here, and then also the spots which Queasy's team could be getting. So you can see they could easily rotate from this rift spot the whole way onto backside, and the most critical point is to get into a spot where you're near center second, such as this hill, or this hill, just so you can control and get a lot of Surge from there. So let's go ahead and take a look at actually how they're able to rotate the zone and what position they put themselves into, and then look where second zone got as well. So you can see here with a really nice rift beneficial. You don't actually need the rift. They could have done this exact same thing at car, but the rift is obviously quite nice. They go Misty back kills, try to third party this fight for a second, and they instantly start moving over towards this catty hill position in a second here. They don't want to waste too much time on edge, there's not really anything to do. They're going to start getting to position early where they can instantly start moving depending on where that second zone pulls. Okay, so you can see exactly what I mean. They go to the secondary spot where they get the car, then they're able to rotate up the hill, get on top of this, and then get into a really nice position on these center hills. They could have done some first zone, however it is normally beneficial to wait for second to see where it goes, and this basically means through that dead side rotate they did, they're in the best position on the map right now. Obviously this hill up here is really nice as well, but these guys have so much potential with Surge on all these different teams down here, and there's just so many other players that are getting caught up. Okay, so as you can see, they got on the spot on second zone, and now third zone is pulled. This is when Surge activates, and they're about 100 above here just because of this good position. And the really beneficial thing about being so quick and efficient off spawn is the fact that they actually know all of this is going to be free. There's nobody on towards this dead side. You really can't play dead side in these stat games unless you get 3 kills or spawn, just because you're going to be below Surge. So these guys made sure they got into this position early. Now they have the freedom to actually rotate through that dead side, knowing there's nobody on that right hand side. They get into the car, make a really nice rotate using the line of sight of the hill and this little bit of ridge here, and they get in towards center third. Basically how Surge works in these really stacked games is you need about 300 to 400 damage for the actual first Surge to activate, so the one that's currently activated now, and they're going to need about 800 for the actual 50-50 Surge as well. So this is a very small detail, but what these guys are doing here is just trying to get a little bit of Surge, and there's no teams around them. Because they went through that dead side and they're kind of away from the congested east-hand side over here, where all the teams are, they actually give themselves the freedom where they can get into a spot where they can refarm so many mats. Compared to every single other trio, despite the fact these guys have 0 kills, they're still in a really good position mats-wise, just because they got into a spot where they could refarm. And the most important thing when you get a zone like this, where you can see it's not really too good, it's going up the mountain, is you need to get yourself into a position that is good first of all, and also is going to be maintained being good for later on. You can't just get into a spot low ground like down here underneath the pylon. You have to make sure you put yourself in a position that's going to maintain how strong it is, and also you can get surge from. So what does that mean? Again, the elevation, how important that's going to be. So they rotate early, which is really nice. Make sure they get into a good position here. Pressure that team off so they don't really get tagged too much. And then will instantly all start ramping up and getting towards its high ground position. And they get really on a nice high layer here. And there's a lot of angles they can get tags from on all these other players that are rotating up the hill. As you can see, this is a really important thing. Also is the fact that they're using soft mats on this bottom part of the base and then metal at this top part. Obviously, they could just box some metal at the low ground point and just save a little bit of mats, but this one extra elevation change plus with the cones on top means they've got a lot more sight lines. It's a lot easier to see downhill like this rather than seeing downhill like this. Obviously, there's walls and stuff in the way that might block your AR tags. It's a very minor detail, but it's extremely important to note if you need to get surge. Okay, so right here they actually get a max distance 50-50 zone. Normally this would be a really massive downside for a team, especially if they're trying to play height, but Queasy rotates this really well. First of all, he just gets a nice little kill on somebody fine. So that's the benefit of being up on these high ground layers, is you get a lot of angles on teams box fighting. You can spray the cones and the floors as well. So he gets a nice little free kill there on Bloomy. Okay, so now let's go ahead and see how he actually rotates this. A lot of teams would make the mistake, and I wouldn't even call it a mistake, instead it's just going and actually rotating around the mountain. Instead, Queasy and his team force their way the whole way up. They use a lot of extra mats by doing this, but it allows them to a really good position later on and allows them to obviously play for height. Now the good thing with this is the fact that it's pulling completely off the hill. It's very hard to judge and gauge how you're going to be able to play high ground or whether you're going to be able to take it at all. All of these teams rotating down here, they don't have any line of sight on the hill at all. So Queasy makes sure he gets up on this hill early enough where he can actually scout and figure out a full line of sight to actually rotate through. And now he can figure out exactly how he wants to play height or whether it's feasible at all. Okay, so right here you can see actually goes ahead and connects this other team. It wasn't really viable for him to go ahead and actually play off the mountain. They actually had to connect to this other team just because it was pulling so drastically downhill. And the good thing with this is actually rotates so early where they're completely ahead of this other team. So they're able to look back and actually get AR shots on this other team that was centre forth. Gets a nice knock there on Xees. However, there still is another team that's actually going to go ahead and take height on them. Right here, this is really just good tourney management by these guys. They could obviously go up and try to take height right now. However, it really isn't worth it before you see zone. As you can see here, if zone pulls anywhere on the north hand side, it's basically useless having height on this back south side. There's literally no point in doing so. So these guys instead decide to chill in the box, wait for zone pull, realize it's pulling their way, and also now they're going to go ahead and start scouting and figuring out what is height doing. Is there a possibility of them going for a full-on build fight take, playing from the back side, playing from the front side, or can they instead do like maybe a chop out play or something as well? Okay, right here, this is where these guys realize, you can see where they're trying to figure out where it's connected to. They're going to go ahead and disconnect all of these old builds. It's a really useful technique that I've seen a lot of players start to do. Actually disconnecting height like this, and then seeing if they can get a chop out. This chop out play would have 100% worked. However, you can see there's one single floor there that's out of their line of sight behind the metal stair that's maintaining high ground. Otherwise, all of these players would have probably either taken a massive amount of fall damage, or probably this guy at the front would have probably just died from the fall damage itself. So you can see that that would have been a really free high ground game, but these guys don't get discontinued by that. They don't try to get like, oh, we can't go for height, let's just start tarping. Instead, they all go up on high ground from different angles at the same time. What Queasy's doing is getting a really nice beam angle from the back. You can see here, he's actually going to go ahead and try to get a nice AR beam on this guy who's tarping front side. It's a load of damage on that guy. Now at this point, Trulex is doing the same thing. He's spraying, he actually gets the knock on this guy as he falls. Then Jur3ky's lurking up from the backside as well. On all different angles, you can see his most important thing. He's going to go up and start build fighting. This guy got a big chunk on actual Queasy. So Jur3ky building up at the backside is really nice. He's able to get the trade in return. Just like that. Two of them are dead. One of them got knocked off at the front side by two of them bloom fighting him from different angles. Jur3ky went up and actually build fought high ground from the back, using some really good aim and mechanics to actually shit on the guy. And then from here, they've got a really simple height game. I will break this down in a little bit more detail if you guys don't know how to play height properly, but these guys do it literally perfectly, and there's literally zero flaws in how they played the game out from here. Okay, so as you can see, the guy with the hard mats is actually tarping forward and making sure he's connecting with these reverse ramps. Rather than water falling down, doing these reverse ramps is probably the best thing. And Queasy, rather than healing and wasting time, instead is making sure he's sticking with his teammates and continuously pressuring the low ground teams below them. They want to force these players off the layers and also make sure they get in a position where they can utilize the harpoon and get refreshes. Just like that, Queasy's really good mats, goes up to reconnect with his teammates, split them the mats and the ammo and everything, and now they're in such a good position to do well this game just because of that one refresh. Taking height is very risky and mat intensive, so if you get a refresh quickly like that, just by pressuring properly, spraying the guys below you, you're a really free win from here. So at this point, all of them are on height, they've just got that refresh and AR ammo. All they need to do is make sure they keep on continuously pressuring these teams that could possibly look for height. You don't really need to spray the low ground teams that much because most of the time they're going to be shambles mats and not able to look for height at all. So what Queasy does here is really nice. He gets that siphon mats by just harpooning it, then he gets front side, and this is where they actually slightly mess up. He basically falls down to low ground. He's able to recover this really well just by lurking behind this rock. Realizes nobody's going to be really looking at this front side of zone. Everybody is focused on the sides and the back of zone. These players aren't even really looking forward apart from when they're tarping. So he jumps up and gets a really nice knock there on the other player, and immediately after doing so just gets up and starts getting up towards his teammates where he can actually go ahead and survive. The most important thing in endgames like this that I see teams mess up, this happens several times throughout the FNCS games on all different regions, is teammates when they hit three players on height, is one of them will drop too early and die. So as you can see here, this is what I mean. Whenever one of your teammates actually falls and the risk of them dying from the high ground, you need to try to make sure you trade and don't let that other team get the loot and then get themselves in a position where they can do well. So you can see here, Queasy actually fell down, Jur3ky fell down as well at the same time. Trulex gets killed, so immediately after getting killed there, Jur3ky makes the instinctive play to just jump down and stop the other players from getting the loot. If they were to get all of Trulex's siphon mats, there's a high chance they lose this game. So Jur3ky jumps down, hits some really clutch 2-pump shots with these guys, absolutely bullies them, gets a thirst as well for the extra mats. And as soon as he does that, instead of going on like a tear and trying to clear out low ground, he instead just regroups with Queasy, plays solid fundamentals where he regroups up high ground, makes sure Queasy's healed up, and now they're able to take the 1v1 really safely as well. Both peaking at the same time, kill Snazer at the end, and that's just a really phenomenally played end game. This game actually ended pretty early on 8th zone just because it was pulling around hills a lot of times, a lot of people burned through mats, but the two different height takes that these guys used this game were really unique and all of their positioning as well was really clean and effective.